What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I've gone ahead and thought of one question for every NBA franchise at this point in the season. These questions can range from how do they fix their defense, should they be involved in a star trade, is this thing that they're doing really well sustainable, things like that. We're going to go through all 30 NBA teams. I'm going to give you each of their question and explain what I mean by asking that. We're going to go in alphabetical order as typical from Atlanta Hawks to Washington Wizards. Should be timestamps on this video so you can go ahead and find a certain team if you're looking for them. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos, and as always, would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. First up, we've got the Atlanta Hawks, and my question for them is, what do they do about this defense? It hasn't been great the whole season, but specifically as of late, it's been a disaster. Against the Indiana Pacers the other day, they gave up 157 points. Then following that up against the Nets on the second half of a back-to-back, they gave up 145. Now, good for them. They scored 147 to beat the Nets, but you can't sustain this. You can't keep giving up this amount of points, a drastic amount, and expect to win very often in the NBA. I don't know if they need to do some kind of scheme change the lineups that they're running, or go out there and make some kind of trade, but for right now, this is just not working. The offense has been enough so far, but you're not going to win a lot playing this way. For the Boston Celtics, my question is, how do you upgrade the depth around your stars? To be honest, I don't have many concerns about Boston right now. They've been the best team in the league easily so far. They're at the top of the Eastern Conference and the NBA as a whole. The starters have looked really good. Tatum, Brown, Kristaps, Drew Holiday are all playing really well. Derek White's been great. Not a lot of concerns. Really, it's just the same thing from the offseason where, is there going to be a trade out there to help you upgrade the depth? You've gotten good but somewhat inconsistent play from Peyton Pritchard. Sam Hauser's been pretty good. Al Horford's been a bit hit or miss, getting older in his career. You definitely want to upgrade the depth a little bit if you can around the deadline. If they manage to do so, I don't know how really any team out there in the East is going to compete with this Celtics squad. For the Brooklyn Nets, my question is, can Cam Thomas be a franchise cornerstone for you going forward? Before his recent injury that's kept him out of the lineup, Cam Thomas was absolutely hooping. He was putting up 27 points per game on about 48% shooting. The three ball was pretty inconsistent, but it didn't matter. He was getting downhill, finishing at the rack, hitting ridiculously contested mid-range jumpers. He just has an unbelievable offensive game at such a young age, and without really getting that much opportunity, he's finally getting actual starting reps for the first time in his career, and he's made the most of them. It's the same stuff he was doing last year when he actually got some run. It feels like he's got a chance to be an actual cornerstone for this team. The sample size isn't phenomenal, so I'm not saying he's going to become one of their key franchise players, but it feels like the potential is there, and if he can unlock that, that's huge for Brooklyn. For the Charlotte Hornets, my question is, how do you build around LaMelo Ball? Coming into the season, I feel like I saw a lot of people questioning if LaMelo could be a franchise guy, which I didn't quite understand. We've seen some great stuff from him, and so far, he's been unbelievable, playing the best basketball of his career and dominating on a night-to-night basis, but it hasn't resulted in a lot of success for the Hornets. This team around him just isn't great right now, and Brandon Miller's looked pretty good. Mark Williams has been great. Like, he's got some good young supporting pieces that I think eventually could be huge for this team, but right now the question is, do you go out there and try and make some kind of trade to upgrade around him in the moment? Like, you've got Terry Rozier's big contract, Gordon Hayward's, maybe you can go out there and bring in another star that could be out there in the market to help LaMelo now, or do you just stand pat, probably get a lottery pick in this upcoming draft, and try and bring someone else in to join LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Mark Williams, and form a pretty interesting young core over there in Charlotte? For the Chicago Bulls, my question is, does the teardown start and end with Zach LaVine? You've probably all heard the report by now that Zach LaVine and the Bulls are mutually interested in exploring a trade, or at least are open to the idea. And with the way the Bulls have been playing and it seems like things are going, that's not surprising at all. A lot of people, me included, have been calling for this franchise to rebuild, and my only hope is that they don't just trade Zach LaVine, that they trade everybody. DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, Alex Caruso, who you could get a ton of value for, anybody that could get you some pieces to head towards this rebuild and you don't see as a long-term part of your future, should be open and available for any and all trades when the deadline rolls around. Part of me is worried that they're going to trade Zach LaVine and try and find some way to retool around the other guys, when in reality, it should be a complete full-scale rebuild. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, my question is, what do they look like when they're actually healthy? This team has dealt with sneakily a lot of injuries to begin this season. Isaac Okoro's missed time, Darius Garland's missed time, and still doesn't feel like he's 100%. Donovan Mitchell is out right now. Jared Allen was out to begin the season. Like, this team hasn't really had their consistent guys out there, it feels like, at all this season so far. I thought they would be one of the best teams in the East coming into the year, and I still think they could maybe do so, although we've seen some problems with this team in the early going. I just don't know how real they are, how big of concerns they should be when we really haven't seen them fully healthy at all to start this season. For the Dallas Mavericks, the question is, how far can this offense take them? So far this season, as was to be expected, they've been one of the best scoring teams in hoops. They're top 3 in offense, while meanwhile, again, as was kind of expected, the defense has been kind of disastrous. They've been one of the worst teams in the league on that end, giving up a ton of points per game, and they tried to add defensive personnel in the offseason. I thought they'd be a more well-balanced team this season, but so far, hasn't been the case. The offense has been enough to get them to 10-5, one of the best records in the West, but when it comes to playoff time, how far can that actually get you when you're playing some of the best teams in the league on a nightly basis? For the reigning champion Denver Nuggets, the question is the bench going to be enough? One of the big concerns heading into the season for the Nuggets, if there was any of them, was their depth. Like, it feels like a lot of teams that are contenders right now in the NBA, they've got this amazing starting lineup with incredible players that have great synergy, but the bench leaves a bit to be desired. They've been relying a lot on young guys, and a number of them have stepped up. I've liked a lot of the defense in particular we've seen from Peyton Watson. Reggie Jackson has been pretty good so far in the absence of Jamal Murray, and even when he was coming off the bench, surprisingly effective, which I was not expecting. Christian Brown's been pretty good as of late. Like, they're holding their own even without Jamal Murray. They're still one of the top teams in the West. And overall, I don't have that many concerns about the bench, but it is the number one thing that I'm currently questioning with this team. For the Detroit Pistons, my question is, how do they escape this cycle? Right now, the Pistons are again the worst team in the NBA after winning 17 games last year, and it feels like they're stuck in a perpetual rebuild. They've got some fun young talent like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson. Marcus Sasser's been good, but none of it is translating to wins. I know they've been without Bojan Bogdanovic, one of their better players all season, but it doesn't feel like when he comes back, he's fixing anything. The spacing has been bad. Cade's had a bunch of turnover problems, which I think a lot of that is because of the spacing. I think if you put shooters around him, the game opens up a lot, and it feels like heading into what feels like the 4th or 5th year of this rebuild, they don't have really any more answers. I don't know if the answer is to tank again and hope you get another piece. I don't know if the answer is to fire Troy Weaver, their GM. I don't know if the answer is to go ahead and try and trade for a star to just make life easier for your young talent. I don't know what the answer is, but they've got to do something fast because they can't keep doing this forever. For the Golden State Warriors, my question is, how do they get consistent offense outside of Steph Curry? So far this season, Wiggins has really struggled. He's probably playing the worst basketball of his entire career. Klay Thompson hasn't looked like himself. He's had a couple good games back-to-back here recently, but even so, on the full season, just hasn't been the Klay of old. Chris Paul's jumper has fallen off a cliff. The young guys have looked good at times, but they're inconsistent. Really, the only consistent force on the offensive end has been Steph, and if they're not getting any consistent production outside of him, I don't know how this team competes at the highest level. I don't know if they need to go out there and make a trade or just pray that Klay and Wiggins figure things out, but right now, somebody has to help Steph way more than they have so far. For the Houston Rockets, my question is this defense actually this good? So far, they've been the 4th best defensive team in basketball, locking up opposing teams on that end. It's been really impressive. Coach Ime Udoka has come in, put in a defensive scheme, and gotten guys to really buy into it. Dillon Brooks has been a revelation for them on that end. Fred VanVleet is competing. Young guys like Jabari Smith Jr. and Jalen Green are really putting in a lot of work. Tari Eason and Jae'Sean Tate have been great energy guys. Even Alperen Şengün, who came into the season as seemingly a defensive liability, has really stepped it up on that end. I think they're for sure a pretty good defensive team. My question is just, are they top 5 defense good, or are they in for some regression at some point during the season? For the Indiana Pacers, my question is, how good can Tyrese Halliburton get? Coming to the season, I think everybody knew Hallie was in for a great year, but I didn't expect this from him. So far, he's putting up about 25 points per game and 12 dimes, rarely ever turning the ball over, while putting up roughly 50, 40, 90 splits. He has been an absolute monster, one of the league's best offensive players, and the engine of the league's best offense so far. He's running everything over there in Indiana, and it feels like they're ready to be a bona fide playoff team. And that's something that I was predicting. I was expecting Indiana to take a jump in the standings. They're one of my sleeper dark horse teams to take a big time leap this upcoming season. But even I wasn't expecting this level of play from Tyrese Halliburton. Now the question is, with him being really young, how good can he get if he's putting up 25 and 12 this early in his career? For the Clippers, the question that's really going to persist for them all season is, was the James Harden trade a mistake? Right now, the Clippers are looking a lot better after an extremely rough start to the James Harden experiment. It feels like they might be putting things together. I think part of that is Russ willingly volunteering to go to the bench. That's been working out. Still feels like they've got some issues with size, and I worry about the health of a big three of Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and James Harden. So far, it's been fine. But really, we're not going to know the answer to this question until the end of the season when we see what they do in the playoffs, and ultimately if they're able to bring back one, two, or all three of their main stars, who are all free agents in this offseason. So really all year, this is going to be the prevailing question. Sticking over in LA for the Lakers, my question is, do they consider the star deal? Right now, the Lakers are playing some decent basketball. They've been very up and down, dealing with a lot of injuries. But as is usually the case, they're in the midst of some potential star conversations. When Zach LaVine's name came up in rumors, the Lakers were one of the top names mentioned that could show some interest in him at some point during this season. A rumor did follow that right now they're just wanting to stay packed with the roster that they've got, LeBron James, AD, and depth pieces, which ultimately I think is probably the best solution for them long term unless a really big name perfect star becomes available, because to get a guy like Zach LaVine, you'd have to give up D'Lo, who's been playing well, Rui, and probably a Gabe Vincent just to make the money work. You've got your depth, and last time they did a 3-star trade, it was the Russ one, which just did not work out for anybody involved. I wouldn't be surprised if they go for a star trade at some point. It's the Lakers, they like to do things like that, but is that actually the right call? For the Memphis Grizzlies, my question is, can the return of Ja Morant even save them at this point? Right now, they're one of the worst teams in the NBA. They've got 3 wins on the season, and Ja Morant's return is still double-digit games away. And that's not the start of it. Marcus Smart injured. Steven Adams out the whole season. Brandon Clark still recovering from his Achilles injury. Luke Kennard out for a few weeks. Jake LaRavia is out for some time. Everybody is hurt. This team continues to fall apart. And by the time Ja comes back, they could very well be like 5-20, 7-18, something like that. Can Ja Morant even save them from that point if they can't get healthy, if they're still going to be missing some of their bigs for the entirety of the season? Is the year already lost for this team? Like the Lakers a couple of teams ago for the Miami Heat, my question is, do they go out there and try and make a star trade this season? Right now, this team is cooking. They're towards the top of the Eastern Conference, despite Tyler Hero missing time, despite many people, I'll admit me included, kind of counting them out at the beginning of the season. They've looked good. Bam's playing fantastically. Jimmy's been really good as of late. The Heat are clicking on all cylinders, but do they go out there and try and pursue the star trade that they've been looking for really over the past few off seasons at some point this year if someone becomes available? Maybe a guy like Zach LaVine, maybe a Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, if guys like that become available, could be interesting for a Heat team that does have a big contract in Kyle Lowry that could get them involved in one of those deals. I wouldn't be surprised if they stood pat. That's typically what the Heat do all throughout the season, specifically at the deadline, but I do think they're an interesting team to keep an eye on that could potentially capitalize on their current success. For the Milwaukee Bucks, my question is the defense actually this bad? I think everybody knew that trading Jrue Holiday for Dame was going to cause some kind of defensive regression, especially on the perimeter, but so far they've been disastrous. They've been one of the worst defenses in the league. The offense has been enough to get them some wins, but like in their game against the Boston Celtics, they were getting walked over for a majority of the game, just guys waltzing to the basket pretty much uncontested. You've got to be better on that end, and with guys like Giannis out there and Brook Lopez, it feels like they should be able to hold their own better than they currently are. Maybe it's just them adjusting to the scheme, trying to find their footing. Maybe they need to make a trade for a better perimeter stopper, but regardless, this team's not going to beat a squad like, say, Boston in the playoffs if they can't defend. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, my question is, are they becoming legitimate title contenders? Last season, I thought the Wolves were going to be the 2 seed. They were going to put things together post-Gobert trade, and obviously that didn't end up happening for a variety of reasons, but so far this season, they're doing what I thought they were going to do last year. They're locking up defensively, led by Gobert, who looks like the decoy so far and is on his rise up to superstardom. Jay McDaniels has been great. Cat is buying into his role offensively and defensively. Mike Conley never turns the ball over ever. This team is currently the 1 seed in the West. It feels like they've got the making of a team that could give most teams in the Western Conference a really tough playoff series, the Nuggets included. They might be the best matchup, period, in the West at this moment for that Denver Nuggets team. I don't know if I want to call them true title contenders yet because it's very early on in the season, but right now, keep an eye on Minnesota. For the New Orleans Pelicans, the question still remains, are they ever actually going to be healthy? Coming into the season, and really over the past few years, that's been the big concern for New Orleans consistently. When healthy with Zion, Ingram, and all their role players out there, the team looks really good, and that's been the case this season. But they haven't had a lot of those instances again. This time, it's not the fault of Zion and Ingram. They've been out there for most games. Instead, it's the supporting cast. Trey Murphy hasn't played so far this season. Jose Alvarado's only shown up once. Larry Nance Jr. is currently out for a little bit. Like, everybody on this team is getting hurt at one point or another, and it's led to them being a middle of pack team in the West. Feels like if they can get fully healthy, they can be really good. It's just a matter of if that's ever actually going to happen. For the New York Knicks, my question is RJ Barrett finally putting it together? When the Knicks drafted RJ 3rd overall, they were probably expecting him to become a franchise guy, and so far, hasn't exactly been the case. And coming into the season, I had kind of given up on him ever becoming a consistent star player. But so far this season, he's probably been the most consistent guy on this entire Knicks roster. He's been really efficient, he's scoring a career high in points per game, been pretty solid defensively. I've really liked everything I've seen from RJ. He's not been this blow-away all-star caliber guy, but really all they need from him is to be a consistent third option to elevate them significantly. Hopefully RJ continues on this track and continues to play like this, and if he does, he becomes really valuable to this Knicks team, and hey, maybe he eventually does find that path to all-stardom at some point. For my favorite team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, my question is, are they ready to compete right now? Coming into the year, I wasn't expecting us to be one of the best teams in the West like we've been so far. I just thought we'd be a playoff team, it'd be a year of growth, and most likely a first-round exit. Instead, we're a top 3 team in the West at the moment, one of the best teams both offensively and defensively. Shea looks like one of the MVP frontrunners again. Chet Holmgren looks like the frontrunner for Rookie of the Year, is putting up 50, 40, 90 while being an elite rim protector. We look fantastic, and it feels like this team could be ready to compete sooner than later. I'm not ready to say we're a contender right now because this team is very young and we haven't seen the squad in the playoffs quite yet. But hey, at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder gave a lot of teams some tough series, maybe even won one, and did a lot better than I think most people, me included, were expecting coming into the season. For the Orlando Magic, my question is this their breakout season? As I'm currently recording this, the Magic just won to go to 10-5 on the season and are the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. They've been fantastic. They're on a 5-game win streak. The defense has been locking up the best in the league so far. Jalen Suggs looks amazing on that end. Paolo and Franz are playing great D and hitting timely buckets. The offense is inconsistent, but it's been enough to get them some wins. They look really good. Now, they're young, and we've seen some teams get off to hot starts and then cool off in the past, specifically a lot of these younger squads. But I don't know, something about the way the Magic are playing feels like this could be their season to get back to the playoffs, and sooner than later, the Magic feel like they're going to be one of the scarier teams out in the East. For the Philadelphia 76ers, my question is, what's the plan to build around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? At the moment, those two are playing like one of the best duos in the entire league. Embiid again looks like an MVP frontrunner. Tyrese Maxey looks like not just an all-star lock, but maybe even an all-NBA caliber guard so far. Highly efficient, great playmaking. He's really breaking out for the Sixers, and they've been one of the better teams in the East despite the whole James Harden situation clouding them at the beginning of the year. They've been a bit up and down as of late, but even still, those two guys have looked really good. Now the question is, what do you do to build around them? They've got a pretty deep supporting cast at the moment. When Kelly Oubre comes back, I think they'll be even better. But do you continue to try and build around these two guys as your stars with just great role players? Or when you've got a ton of cap space in the offseason, do you go out there and try to pursue a third star? You try and make a star trade at the deadline using some of those expiring contracts? What do you go for? What is the plan to give Joel Embiid and Maxey some help? How do you optimize these two great players with the way that they're playing at the moment? For the Phoenix Suns, my question is, are we ever actually going to see this big three play together? We've seen Kevin Durant play, we've seen KD and Booker, we've seen Kevin Durant and Beal, but so far, we have not seen a single instance with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker all on the court, and we're 15 games in. It's almost been a fourth of the season. They haven't shared the court for a single minute so far. We knew there were going to be injury issues most likely throughout the season. All three guys are somewhat injury prone at this point in their career. I made a full video about that actually in the offseason. But we're almost 20 games in. I thought at least at one point we'd have seen all three of them on the court. Now, to the Suns' credit, they've still been staying afloat and looked pretty good so far when they've had Kevin Durant and Booker out there. But if they can't get Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker out there on a consistent basis, this team isn't going to be able to get anywhere close to their ceiling. For the Portland Trailblazers, my question is, could somebody be willing to take on Jeremy Grant at some point soon? In the offseason before the Dame trade request, the Blazers gave Jeremy Grant a ton of money. It's a really big contract for Jeremy Grant, but to his credit so far, especially going through all the injuries the Blazers have had, he's been pretty good. He's looked like a reliable offensive option, played some good defense. He's been their best player on a night-to-night basis. If he keeps playing like this, I wouldn't be surprised if some team out there takes a chance on him even though he's got that big time contract, and that'd be a big win for the Blazers if they could turn what seemed like a massive overpay in the offseason into some type of asset for their rebuild. For the Sacramento Kings, my question is this the season for them to go all in? As I'm recording this, they're sitting at 8-6 despite De'Aaron Fox missing some time with injury, and they've looked pretty good when he's been out there. He's looking like the best version of himself and making a legitimate all-NBA case so far this season. that brings up the question of, do they go ahead and try and add a third star next to Fox and Sabonis at some point this season? According to reports, the Kings are expected to be pretty aggressive in trying to do so if the right player does become available by the deadline. Those players could include Zach LaVine, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, other guys that could become available. My question is this the right moment to go ahead and do so? Do you mess this up if you're looking good by the deadline? Is the right star actually out there, or do you wait till the offseason to better evaluate and see what you can do if maybe a better star does become available, rather than cashing in your chips a little bit early? For the San Antonio Spurs, my question is, how long is this Jeremy Sochan point guard experiment going to continue on? Right now, they're trying to turn Jeremy Sochan, who has never really felt like a point guard, into exactly that. He's had some flashes here and there of some solid facilitating, but for the most part, it's been kind of a disaster. He's struggling because of it, because I think it's way more valuable for him to get reps in an off-ball role where he's looked pretty good so far this season, and I imagine that's the role he'll be playing for a majority of his career. Victor Wembanyama is struggling because when Sochan's out there facilitating, he's missing him a lot of times when he's got mismatches in transition. When Trey Jones is running the show, things look a lot better, and I feel like he needs those point guard reps. I just feel like they're trying to make something happen that's not going to happen, and it's not really helping anybody in the long run. For the Toronto Raptors, my question is, do Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby make it through the season on the roster? This was the question coming into the year, and it's probably going to be the prevailing theme for them the entire season. Both have been huge pieces for them for years, but are on expiring contracts. They just saw Fred VanVleet walk for nothing in the offseason, so are they willing to risk that potentially happening with one or both these guys this offseason, or do they go ahead and get in front of the thing and just trade both of them for a lot of assets to continue this rebuild, now around emerging franchise cornerstone Scotty Barnes? It's really interesting if they do become available. I think they're two of the top candidates on the market, and I really think they could get a big-time haul to help expedite this rebuild if they do decide to pull the trigger on a trade. For the Utah Jazz, my question is, do they consider going on a fire sale at some point this season? The season isn't going well for the Jazz so far. They're one of the worst teams in the West, which is to be expected. They're in the early goings of their rebuild, and a lottery pick is probably exactly what this team needs. But it brings up the question, do they consider trading off some of their veteran pieces around the deadline to help the tank out and get some more assets for this rebuild? Could they trade a Jordan Clarkson, a Kelly Olynyk, a Colin Sexton, amongst others, who a number of contending teams could be looking to add at some point throughout this deadline season? I wouldn't be surprised if they go ahead and deal some of these guys, although I also wouldn't be surprised if they try to keep some veterans on this team, because they're currently bad enough to probably get one of the top picks, even with a lot of those guys playing. And finally, for the Washington Wizards, my question is the Jordan Poole era already coming to an end? When they added Poole in the offseason, I was really excited for both sides. I thought he could go ahead and have a career revival over in Washington now, out of Golden State, where literally to start last season he got punched in the face. Maybe he could recapture some of the magic we saw from him in that 2022 run where he was really integral to the Warriors winning it all. And for Washington, maybe he could be one of the first cornerstones for this new era that they were going towards. Instead, it's been a disaster. He's been one of the league's worst players, been very inefficient, hasn't really done anything to showcase why he's a franchise cornerstone, and now a couple reports have come out that they don't really see him as that cornerstone type of player, and I can't blame them with the way he's played so far. I hope he finds a way to turn things around, because I still do believe in Jordan Poole and want to see him succeed, but it feels like his era in Washington might be over pretty much as soon as it started. And with that, that's my question for all 30 NBA teams. Like I said earlier, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on my question for your team, or if you've got a different one, would love to hear that as well. If you have any questions for me, drop them also as well. I'd love to go ahead and talk hoops with y'all down below in the comments. But yeah, I believe uploading this on Thanksgiving, maybe the day after, so regardless, if you celebrate, hope you had a great Thanksgiving, hope you got to spend time with friends and family, and I just really appreciate all the support that y'all have given. I'm extremely thankful for the platform that you've given me, all the support over the years. We're just getting started, the channel is growing at a rapid rate, and it's all thanks to y'all, so really appreciate y'all. Yeah, can't thank you enough for the support. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.